Hello everybody, I have a Ford Flex here. I'll be doing a timing chain guide and water pump on this car. What we need to remove is the intake manifold. All the intake boxes have to come out so we can gain access to the rear valve cover. Most of this wiring that you see, routing, has to be cleaned up, removed. You can put it aside. And then any dirt that you see sitting around there has to be cleaned up, because once you remove the valve covers, you don't want anything dropping into the engine. To do this job, you do need few tools. You need to lock the cams in place once you get the chains off. And of course, you need a jack to hold the engine in place because the front mount is coming off. This car is losing coolant, and that's stated by a customer. He noticed coming from the front of the car, and he believes it needs new water pump. So since we are replacing water pump, it is in the chain area. We are going to end up replacing chains and guides and a tensioner. When disconnecting these vacuum lines, because everything is brittle and it could break. The car is very old, I mean, unless you're working on a newer car. And there we go. Remove the clips. The box comes off. The filter. I'm not going to take this off. This one stays. With these Fords, you do have these safety clips in place. You have to pull them forward this direction, like so. Don't try too hard. And then you have this metal black clip, and it comes off a little bit hard. Don't try too hard on the pigtails. You can yank them. You can feel the wires are very hard. It's a heat, due to the heat. When it comes to vacuum lines like this, you're going to push this one in, like so, and yank them out. Okay? Alright, we got that one out of the way. Now, it would be nice to follow them along and remove any hangers they might have. And then follow it along and remove it if it's necessary completely out of the way, which I am going to do that. I don't want to damage this line. Now, I have an intake manifold almost free. We got a brake booster vacuum here to remove, and then we believe there's another vacuum here to remove. This harness here is secured on this fastener. I'm going to remove same way on these fasteners and take everything out of the way. When it comes to removing this hose, you don't need to disconnect here. It simply pops out from the bottom. When it comes to this hose, there's barely any room behind it. So when you disconnect the manifold, pull it forward, and you easily get an access. One thing you don't want to do, even though it looks very easy, do not try to remove it from here. You will end up breaking these. At this point, you're done. You don't need to remove any other parts on the intake manifold side. You do not need to disconnect your fuel line or any of that accessories. What you want to do is definitely block and cover these. You don't want any materials dropping inside, causing you further headache. How it should look like. I got all the cables out here, wires disconnected here. This one has a tape on it. You could use whatever you want. All the objective is not to get anything in there. So I got all that disconnected. So this one cannot be completely out of your way because it's going into the chassis, and I'm not going to disconnect any further. So your oil valve covers are free to work on. So next thing we need to remove is the engine coolant reservoir from here, held by two 10mm bolts, one here and one down here. You remove that, reservoir container comes off. And then you would have to remove the engine mount. You got two bolts here and one here. Take that mount out. After that, you got a engine mount holder onto the engine block that has to be removed. Has 3 bolts on it. This is how it looks like. There you go. So you have to remove those 3 bolts. One thing I'll tell you is labor time, according to all data or all the other softwares for this car, is not a joke. Take it very seriously, because this is one of those tight spice cars where you don't have a lot of room to work with, and you have to figure out a lot of things to get stuff going. So right now I gotta take out the power steering pump, which is right here, and you have 2 bolts there and then 1 on top. There's no adjustments on it. There's a little spacer in the bottom that will come off and the pump will slide. You take the belt off. And you can see how these bolts are in the way of the frame. I have to lift the motor up to get to those bolts of the timing cover. So so right now I've taken the cover off and I got the water pump out as well. And one thing I want to point out for everybody is you definitely need a tool to pull the crankshaft pulley out. It won't just come out. And you don't try pry bars, you're going to crack the timing cover. Anyway, when it comes to water pump, you have 2 notches. 1 notch here, 1 notch here. Once you remove all the bolts, you're going to pry both at the same time, and it'll pry your water pump out for you. After this, we're going to clean up all the silicone material from all around the cover. Put a new chain back on, put a new guides back on, tensioner back on. The back chains be replaced, the guides be replaced. You definitely do need a tool to lock your camshafts in place, otherwise you'll be in trouble. I am using a pointer for myself to make sure the DT number 1, cylinder number 1's on the top. I also marked these timing marks. I'm working with those. That all has to be done. Water will get into that, and you have to do an oil change, otherwise you will have a water in the oil. It's a messy work, but it has to be done. This is the timing cover for that Ford. I gotta clean this up a little bit and shoot a new paint on it. Looks nice afterwards. I just finished cleaning the cover. Just finished cleaning the motor contact, put new water pump in here. What I'm right now changing is the cam gears. The older ones, it looks like has sprung a leak from one of the seals, and I can see it's been there's a lot of oil coming out. So on this one, actually you can see right here, you see how this whole side is connected and you have a little gap here. That's where the oil was coming out on the other one. So I'm going to replace both of the gears, the chain, and the tensioner on that side now. On this side, I would replace the gear 1, gear 2, the tensioner, and the chain is replaced. So I'm going to go ahead and replace that side. This guy, I wouldn't want to replace it, but since we're replacing the main one, I might as well. So I got that one done. These are some of the things I've taken out so far. Water pump was shot 100%. That's the tensioner for the secondary chain, and the guides we're going to be replacing. So that's where we're going next. This is the original tensioner. I'll be replacing that. I'll be replacing this guide here. This is the tool you definitely need. It actually helps you when you trying to crank to loosen the camshaft pulleys. Keep the cams locked in place so you're not worried about losing your timing anyway. Let's see how the timing cover and valve cover came out. Valve cover number 1 valve cover number 2 ended up cleaning and painting. Here's the timing cover, cleaned and painted. On the other side is clean. So now I'm going to go ahead and change the other side of the cams. Here we go. I got both of the cam gears replaced on this one too. Got the water pump, timing chain is all aligned and chained. I haven't tensioned it out yet. I'm going to tension it next. Right now I got to install the variable valve timing actuators, and then I think start wrapping things up. So finally got the car put back together. It's running right now, and the coolant level seems to be holding. So just a brief overview for you guys who's trying to do this by yourself. One thing you do want to make sure that you have your valve cover gaskets. Even though the old ones are good, if the car has 170,000 miles, you might as well replace them. So I got silicone valve cover gaskets, silicone intake manifold gaskets. If you go to AutoZone or something, you'll get rubber ones. but if you pre-order it, you can get silicone ones, which in my opinion are way better, honestly. So we got new spark plugs. His old spark plugs were dead. The pins for the iridiums were down to like ceramics. Hold on, I'll show you. Here are the plugs that came out of that car.